Welcome to another edition of the Empower Hour. I am your host, Al Kumar. As you can see, Hanifa is not here with me today. A last minute decision. She's not feeling well, under the weather. So it's going to be me today facilitating this extremely hot topic that's also important. So much so that we're not even going to waste any more time. We're going to jump right into the discussion. Here in the studio with me today, I have my brother, the Irritated Genie of Southeast. He always comes and joins us whenever we have these very intricate topics of discussion that we need help hashing out. And so this one is no different. The topic today is the whitewashing of the black family. Is there an agenda at play? So, my brother here has dedicated his life to sharing with us his knowledge and wisdom and understanding as it relates to this topic and a whole lot more, the empowerment of black people. And so the Irritated Genie of Southeast, thank you so much for joining us yet again.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, we always am pleased to have you on the program because you're always giving us something very insightful to think about. And you always come from an angle that, for me personally, that a lot of things that I've never even considered before. And I pride myself as being one who studies. But you always, and then you have a brilliant way of breaking things down to make it easy to understand. So, because this is a complicated topic, is there an agenda at play to whitewash the black family here in this society?
There absolutely is. It's no question about the fact that, and I think most people can relate to it on a very simplistic basis. When you turn on the television, if it's a commercial, a television program, or a movie, they're going to have a black man with someone other than a black woman. Usually it's a white female, if it's not another male. Then they're going to have a black woman in a horrible situation if there's a black man anywhere near her. But if she's with a white male, she's going to be smiling and looking like she's having the happiest time of her life. If it's a black athlete who's married to a black woman, you're not going to know that he's married to a black woman. And you're never going to see them together, and they're never going to be depicted as being as happy with a family that they are. But if it's a black athlete that's married to a white female, it's going to be put out prominently so that everybody can see it. And so what's happening is we're noticing, people now, just the everyday person, are saying, why are they constantly promoting these interracial dating? But what we don't understand is the more nefarious nature of it. It's not just because somebody decided to do it. It's an intentional genocidal program that's being put in place.
Yeah, because in my mind goes, if it wasn't intentional, I would think that it would be a gradual progress. You would see, here and there, every now and again, you would see interracial couples, but it's an influx. It's like everywhere. All of a sudden, anything you see is the dichotomy has changed drastically, So that doesn't happen by nature.
No.
So we have to then ask the question, who's behind making these changes in mainstream media? Can you share with us why? Why would somebody want to make these drastic changes?
We're living in a very interesting time right now. In America, the percentage of the population that's just outright white and European is vastly decreasing with the influx of Hispanic community and various other groups, and a declining population growth rate for whites.
And this information is known.
I mean, you have people like, gosh, I forget his name, not Pat Robertson, but one of the other, I'm forgetting his name, not Jimmy Swagger, but one of the main white Christian evangelists, Pat Buchanan, putting out, they're doing books saying, hey, the declining white race is disappearing, the disappearing white race. So this
study
facts.
Is right.
And what's happening is, based on that, there are a number of different factors that are playing into the fact that they're looking around the world and saying, well, where's the population growth increasing?
Yeah.
The African continent is one of the largest exploding populations. Asia, and the various other, if for lack of a better term, colored people or non-white groups around the world. And so part of what they want to do is to make sure that black people don't just numerically outnumber other groups in this planet, particularly the whites in this planet, and particularly in this country. And so they're taking steps to make sure that doesn't happen. And one of the steps that they've taken historically to either do two things: to destroy black civilization, or to stop a growing black population, like in Brazil, is that they create a climate that makes it only acceptable for a dark-skinned person to be with someone white or lighter. And they promote the idea to the youth that you're only good if you're lighter. And then we begin the process of believing that, and then darker-skinned people only marry on to lighter and lighter and lighter until sometime in Brazil, there's certain regions. If you get the book SBA, the Reascension of the African Mind by Asa Hilliard, he talks about one region where in a generation and a half, 2 generations, they had gone from like 90% black to like 12 to 15% black, just by creating a culture where black people didn't want to be with one another.
I think of Haiti versus the Dominican Republic. There's another scenario. Now this is a whole one island, one landmass, split, where the vast majority of the people on the Haitian side are darker hue, and the vast majority of the Dominican Republic side are a lighter hue. Now how did they get that way? How did the same group of people, one side lighter, the other darker? So going into what you're saying.
Yeah, the process of enslavement and the way that they operated, their modus operandi, was different for different groups of Europeans. The British have always been a egalitarian. I'm British, I'm the best. Even if we look at for the Americans, so it was, if we rape a black woman and she gets pregnant, that child is one of theirs because they're not British, they're not one of us. The Spanish, who were ruling what we call the Dominican Republic, they had a different process. It was more, okay, if I take this black woman, we have a child, we'll work with the child. But the other pure Africans are lower than us. So they kind of the Spanish embraced the mulatto class as a buffer group, as opposed to just using them to fight. They embraced them more as family, whereas the British, the French, and other groups didn't have as much of an embrace. So what you see is, in that island, quite frankly, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to say this, but really in the Dominican Republic, you have an island of mulattoes who are not only physically mulatto, but who are more intellectually mulatto, meaning I am siding with, really they want to be white, but they know that they're not exactly white and they're not actually accepted that way, but that is their interest. And so any rejection of anything black is a priority in their life, the way that they live their life.
The vast majority of
the vast majority. It's not 100%, but
right.
it's just it's so many that that's the culture in that country.
Right, the culture norm.
That's the culture. I'm gonna say it's the culture because the culture is what happens on a normal basis. Then the deviation from the culture is that you have Dominicans who are very strong and proud about their African bloodline and who they are, and they exist and they show themselves, but they themselves will say, "I'm fighting against the culture of the Dominican Republic," which is a anti-black, anti-African culture.
Right, and that's just a couple of scenarios you just mentioned. I mean, we can go to the Aboriginal Australia. And they even have a movie out, well, it's been out for a while, called The Rabbit Proof Fence, that actually documents the story of how it took place. For those who think, we'll hear you talk and they'll say, I don't believe that. That couldn't be. No way could they be deliberately attempting to lighten the coloration of the society. Well, it was done before. So the rabbit-proof fence goes into that. You want to share a little bit about what you know?
Yeah, if you watch the movie Rabbit Proof Fence, it's based on a true story of a young lady who had gotten kidnapped and then had escaped to run back home and was being, there's another one called Tracker. But in the Rabbit Proof Fence, it showed how the white male was talking about the process, and this is based off history. Why are we going to interbreed with the Aborigines? And what he showed was that, hey, if you take one Aboriginal person and one white, you do get a half. He described it as a half caste. But he said, but let me show you by the third mix or third cross what you have. You have someone that's indifferentiable from a European white. So he was saying, when we do this process, we'll make them better because ultimately we'll eradicate them and they'll be absorbed into the white race. And what we traditionally think is, oh, we breed with them, we're going to make them black. We don't understand. That is a psychological perspective that was given by Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, saying that the whites had a fear of genetic annihilation, which is true, but I think everybody does. I have a fear of genetic annihilation. They're trying to kill black people. Everybody wants the race to exist. But in reality, if we look at it from a historical basis, the way that races have been wiped out through miscegenation and interracial breeding has been whites wiping black people out. We have not wiped them out through genetic mixing in the past.
Right. So like you just described, I mean, can you just break it down again, how it's done?
Okay, it's done like this. So let's say you take somebody darker than me. Let's say 2 or 3 shades darker than me. Let's take a Wesley Snipes. If you put Wesley Snipes with a white female and they have a child, that child might be my complexion or maybe your complexion, maybe even a little bit lighter. But then that child, if you get them with someone white, that child that comes out between them is going to be very close to white, if not white. But then definitely when that child does it, the grandchild, once that grandchild has a baby with a white, you will not be able to tell that grandchild from any European on the planet. So that is the process that they do. They convince or they force, either through force or psychological training and manipulation. They get the group of black people to say, we don't want to be black, we want to be lighter. And they get us through 3 generations, and they literally do about a grandchild of that family. So if I start and do it, then I have a child, then that child does and have a grandchild. That grandchild that they have is indifferentiable from being white.
Muhammad Ali comes to mind.
Yes.
He has a grandson that you wouldn't even know had his genes. He looks European.
He does, but the interesting thing, he absolutely looks like a European. But when you put him right next to Muhammad Ali, you can see Muhammad Ali's nose. It's almost like a vampire movie. You can see the nose, you can see the lips, you can see the eyes, but he's white. And if you don't see them together, there would be no way anybody could convince you that this white male had anything to do with this black man. But Muhammad Ali's daughter married a white male and had a son. And this grandson, you could not tell has any black blood in him. And then he's now dating a white female. When they have a child, it'll be just an absolute European where nobody will have any indication whatsoever that this was Muhammad Ali's bloodline.
Wow. So for those who will hear this and say, so what? Oh, well, you know, it's a multicultural society. And if it turns into what you're talking, okay, who cares? How would you respond to an attitude like that?
I would say for that person, then you're a person who's being very clear and honest that you have no racial responsibility, and that to some degree you're basically saying every ancestor that fought so that we could be here as African people, fought for their language, fought for our identity, fought to keep the family together, that you're saying you're abandoning that mission, that you have no consideration for any black person, any black man that's ever chosen a black woman as a wife in the history of the world, and any black woman that's ever said, this is the man that I want, this black man, and black culture, black history, black families. You're basically saying you basically have no regard for the continuation of our race, and that's a position that a person has a right to take. I certainly don't take that position, but I think we'd be better off if people would just come out and say, I hate my race, I don't want anything to do with it, and I'm going this other direction, so that those of us who do love the race, we can work together to try to preserve it.
Yeah, and not only that, but yourself. It's like, for me, if you look in the mirror and love yourself, then I would assume you would want to duplicate that. So,
But see, you just did the quid pro quo. That's a discussion we don't have. You assume that a person looks in the mirror and loves themselves.
Wow.
And I'm going to say, if you love yourself, you judge people by the state of your own mind. Yeah, you would think that too. I love being black. My children love being black because I teach them that. But that's what you see when you look in the mirror, what I see when I look in the mirror, and what every black person that loves themselves and love our history and culture see when we look in the mirror is not the vampire and the monster that many of our people, due to low self-esteem and a lack of knowledge of our history and culture and upbringing and abuse that they receive from other black people. That's not what they see.
Wow, that's a sad thought. Why do so many of us get caught up in these traps? I mean, I would think that if by this time in history, we should know who our enemies are and all the things that they've done over the course of time to attempt to destroy us completely. Why are we so trustworthy? Why do we still fall for these traps?
You know, and you say something again that's an assumption, and I, until about a couple of years ago, Professor Small said something to me, and when he said it, I couldn't even digest it, but having thought about it for some time, it's extremely profound. He said, you know, slavery was one thing. He said, but during our chattel enslavement in this country, they didn't have psychological warfare or the level that they have now. They didn't have television and movies and industry. They didn't have these miseducation systems the way they have now. They didn't have this blatant pornography just going around. So, you know, people had family structures and they passed down stories. There was still a culture even during slavery. We are in a time when, for what you're saying to be to jail, we would have to have a sense of history. Here's the difference. During that time, the white was whipping us, so we knew who not to trust.
Right.
We could see them.
Right.
With the
feel it.
We could feel it. So we could feel the pain, and we knew who did it, and we could see them stripping our families away from us. Now, they've created circumstances where the black man is walking out on his family, as opposed to the European. You can't see the European doing it. The black man is the one beating his family, or he's the one that's doing something. Or even if he's not, the black woman has been programmed to believe that the black man is her enemy. She doesn't see the whites as her enemy. The black man is dealing with problems. He's dealing with his woman, not understanding that her programming has been done by the system, and he's looking and saying, what the heck is wrong with these women? They trying to destroy us, not realizing and seeing the enemy. So when you say, why do we trust them? To a large degree, and we do trust them far more than we should, is because we are in, even though we're in the information age, truthfully, I believe that in 2018, we are less aware of white supremacy and racism than we were in 1918.
Why? Distractions?
Because the psychological warfare, through the movies, through the miseducation in the school system, through the distractions, like you're saying, through the pornography. You can watch some pornography with blacks and whites, and we all just having a wonderful good time. And the idea that we're have access to media that saturates and destroys the mind, but we don't look at the cultural things that it does. The things that we're watching when we watch a television program or a movie where a black woman falls in love with this white male and he rides off into the sunset, we can see that maybe this is interracial. What we're not seeing is, this is the individual who raped her children yesterday and are locking her children up in jail today, and are systematically putting her children on Ritalin and destroying her future. And she's sitting there looking at him as a savior on a TV program and really believing that he is a savior, so now she's going to actually date one in real life, not recognizing that she didn't create that problem in her mind. Someone has figured out there's a better way to do this than whips and chains. And they're doing it, and quite frankly, the men being the protectors, we're not protecting the minds of our people. Right. We're not putting the things in place so that our people can understand what's being done, so that we can adequately protect ourselves from it.
Yeah. Wow, that's heavy. Because I think about the media and how instrumental it was in how other people throughout the world view us as black people. You know, we wonder why it's so easy for police officers to shoot us down in the street, and they get off with impunity, without, you know, having to suffer any consequences for their crime. And we think about, and it's not just European people, it's other people throughout societies that look at us in the same mannerisms. Why is that, when the vast majority of us are not the people that are displayed on the screen? So then my mind goes to, well, how is that, why is that done? And if these same people who destroy our good image now are going to turn around and give us all this wonderful imagery of black and white together and loving each other, so it's like, you know, the technology at play, and we don't put two and two together. So I don't, you know, that.
And see, and this, I don't want to get too sophisticated, but here's where the sophistication comes in, because one would ask, well, if this media has this impact on black mind, doesn't it have an impact on the white mind as well?
Right.
Well, the answer is yes.
Right.
But this is the part we're missing. It's not the Anglo-Saxon white who's controlling media.
Right.
And the reality of it, when Pat Buchanan and the rest of these whites are talking about the diminishing white population in this country and them facing genocide, in a bizarre, honest, real way, they are. Because it's not the white Anglo-Saxon that is promoting this miscegenation and integration.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually the white so-called Jew, the Zionist.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So, because the white so-called Jew sees himself as separate and distinct from the white Anglo-Saxon,
Yeah.
they actually want whites to mix because they want to destroy the white race and the black race. As black people, we're not thinking about the fact that whites are going. We're looking at how whites are treating us. We don't care about that. And the whites are not concerned with what's happening to black people. They just as racist they want to be. But while all that's happening is both groups are being destroyed by the middle guy, Mr. Middle, the small hat in the middle. Yeah, because his thing is, I'm going to destroy both groups and keep them fighting with one another while I control and take control of everything on the planet. And they're the ones that have, I'd say, 95% control over every aspect of media on this planet they have some impact on.
Right.
And for the most of it, they create it and can totally control it.
Right, and then it's getting smaller because now I think it's only six people control 95% of all the mass media we see. 6 people. And I think that's getting smaller because now here Disney is eating up everything that's for sale, buying up everything that's for sale. The Anti-Defamation League, it's an interesting dynamic to where the Jewish people have an actual organization that fights against these very things that we're discussing. Anything or anybody who attempts to speak the truth about them in the public eye, they get clamped down by the ADL. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, see, this is the thing. The only way that the Zionists, the small hats, can successfully do what they're doing, because they're involved in the most corrupt, violent, racist abuse of really the greatest forms of genocide on the planet. The only way they can do that is that people cannot see them and know who they are. They're like vampires. They come and they operate under the darkness of night. You don't see them. You can't recognize them. You just see a white individual, don't know that they're Zionists. They're very different than the average Anglo-Saxon white. And both of them may not like you, but one of them will be more honest with you. You can deal with them. And the other one is quite sophisticated. So in order to prevent people from being able to see them, they create groups like I call it the African Defamation League, but the Anti-Defamation League, who says anybody that says anything bad about Jews, we're going to go and we're going to destroy their life so that we intimidate anybody from telling the truth about what we're doing, so that we as the small hats will not be seen. Because it's not that they're not people that know what they're doing and how they're doing it.
Right.
It's that once you say it out loud, you come under the most vicious assault that you can come under, that you decide it's better not to say anything. Henry Ford was a great example. Anytime you have the guy who manufactured and created the car to get beat down to the point where he backs off of his statements about the international Jew and the damage they're causing on the planet, that's a lot of power. Even though what you're saying is true and you're documenting it with truth, you're just afraid to do it because they're going to destroy you economically or they'll kill you.
You know what I find interesting too? Anytime I go in search of some on-the-ground facts about what happened under Adolf Hitler's rule, I'm not talking from the side of the Jews. Mm-hmm. I'm talking the side of Hitler and his people, or his mind, and why he decided to do what he did. I always come up empty-handed.
I'm gonna tell you what's so interesting about that, and I won't do a lot, but just so people can get a small understanding from the other side of a more objective perspective of why Hitler and the Germans were so angry with the Jews. I can't go into the deep but let me just say it like this. When the Russians were killing the Jews, the Jews had overthrown Russia for 3 days. Once the Russians got back in charge, they started killing them and imprisoning them and everything, and they had to leave. So nobody in Europe would take them. People don't know this. They've been put out of countries in Russia in Europe so many times, nobody wants them.
Right.
The Germans said, hey, these are our brothers, we'll open it up. Shortly after they did it, we're not even talking about for 30 or 40 years, like 20 years, a couple decades. They allowed the Jews in. They got rich and wealthy through trade and commerce, which is their skill with money. And then the Germans were winning World War I, and the very Jews that they let in, the small hats they let into their country, went and did a backdoor deal with England and say, look, we want Palestine as our own place. We'll help you win World War I. Because the Germans pretty much had won the war. We'll help you win World War I to the English if you let us have this land. They were like, how can you get us win? They said, don't worry about that. We'll bring America in and make it happen. So the Jews came with their power in America and forced America to jump into World War I, which America had nothing to do with, only so that they could then collect on their deal with the English to get Palestine as their homeland that they now have made Israel.
Right.
That's how that was done. Well, in doing that, they destroyed Germany, and when the Germans found out, of course, they were infuriated. Like, we let you over here. So what the Jews did said, they literally, if you go look up, put it in the World Congress of Jews will starve the Germans. They actually put it out in the paper. They called themselves, this is what they put in the American papers. We're going to starve the Germans, because the Jews were now mad because the Germans were angry at them for selling them out.
Yeah.
And so now they start unelecting some of them. They hadn't start hurting them at first. They said, we're not going to elect you to office in the Jews. How can you do this? We should be in office. So they said, the World Congress of Jews, we're going to starve the Germans. And they took the most thriving nation in Europe, which was Germany at the time, because America was his #1 trade partner. They began to starve them. Literally, the white German children were running around eating. When they say dirt poor, literally they were eating dirt. I'm not exaggerating. Like, you can look at some of the old documentaries. They would just sit there and be eating dirt.
How do they do that? Starve them out?
Because they start creating, once, whenever war is over, once World War I was over, what they signed in the agreement was so horrible to the Germans in terms of the agreements they had to make that it starved them out. And the Germans only made 30% of their own food. 70% that they got from their money that they made from trade. And their #1 trade partner was America. So now they didn't have no money to buy food.
Got it.
And they would create inflation. When the German would leave work at 5 and get paid on Friday, if bread was $1, by the time they ran from their job at 5 p.m. to go to get some bread, it was $2 now. So the inflation was worse than what the America tried to do in Zimbabwe recently.
And the Jews were
controlling
all of it.
The Jews would ride around in limousines with bread. They had a game. And they would ride, and they'd see a bunch of German children, and we would ball it up, and they would throw it in the middle of them, and the German children would fight and beat each other merciless to try to get a little piece of bread, and they would just crack up and drive off. I mean, this is a game they used to play.
Wow.
So this is the game, and here's what's even worse, and it's relevant to our conversation here now. Here's what really ticked them off. Understand who the Germans were before the Jews undermined them in World War I. You have guys that might have 2 or 3 properties, children going to college and going abroad. They were very wealthy, but 70% of that wealth came from their trade with America. So I mean, they trade around the world. So they were trade wealthy.
Yeah.
They produced a lot of things.
Right.
So once the small hats took over, it got so bad that literally these same people that had 2 or 3 homes and were living like this were now sitting on the state capitol with 3 or 4 of their children. And somebody would come to have sex with his daughter so that they could eat, and he'd tell her to go off and do that. They would have roving gangs of homosexuals. You can see this stuff. There's a thing called Sin City. Get Sin City, the one on Berlin. It's not going to give you everything, but you'll start seeing some of the glimpses of it. They would have roving gangs of homosexual guys. They'd be walking around, and then they'd just snatch your son up, take him and rape him, and make him join the gang. In fact, when Hitler got out of jail and decided he was going to take over the country, before there was the SS, there was the SA. Hitler was infuriated because there was a bunch of gay dudes that ran the military that was having sex with boys. He was like, I'm not having it. So he wiped them out and then started his SS and literally took Marcus Garvey's platform and the information from Henry Ford and merged the two. That's why when you see the SS walking around like this, they're doing what the African Legion under Garvey was doing. When you see Hitler, the way he was talking, he was studying Garveyites and the whole movement of nationalism and just applied it racially for the Germans. But the reason it was so attractive to people was because at one time you were wealthy with 2 or 3 properties, doing well, doing international business. Now, literally, people are taking your sons and daughters around as prostitutes. And now what people are doing is, now you see these guys with these nice uniforms coming out saying be proud and be productive. You don't have to be anybody's whore. And so the people loved it because it was a sense of pride and dignity that Hitler was bringing back under the, that was the formula that he used, and tell them, you don't have to be like this. And then Hitler would come very boldly and tell them, let me tell you who did this to you. And that's when the people started hearing what he was saying, and he wrote Mein Kampf and everything like that. People was like, they were upset.
And I guess they learned some things as to why the ADL even exists. Why the Anti-Defamation League even exists today. Because in order for you to exist, you must have had some history.
That's right.
So, and it's interesting, like, I think of the Minister Farrakhan, and he's always attempted to get the word out about what the Jewish people are doing to us specifically. And every chance they get, they attempt to clamp him down, now they trying to get him off Twitter now because of that. He specifically mentioned the Jews, and now it was this rush to remove him from Twitter. And I think about how because why we, like I said, before you started on sharing with us what you knew, I said anytime I try to get information, I get deadlocked. I just, and thinking about who controls the information. So if the Jewish community controls the information, and I'm trying to get information on the Hitler side of the story, guess what?
You're going to have a very difficult time. Let me just tell people a few good resources if you want to start.
Okay.
If you're black, the Jewish onslaught. You really can't beat that one to understand their modus operandi and how they operate. Tony Martin tells his story. But there's another book, I would say, pound for pound, if you're white or black. Pound for pound, it's called The Synagogue of Satan. And it's by a white guy named Hitchcock. Let me tell you something. This book by Hitchcock is a mind-blowing book. And what I love about it, it goes in a chronology.
Alfred Hitchcock?
No.
Oh.
No, not Alfred Hitchcock. It's another white guy named Hitchcock, more recent. I think he did about 15 years ago. But the book is phenomenal. And then, of course, you can get The International Jew by Henry Ford. The Synagogue of Satan is just great for anybody. Yeah. But what's so good about the International Jew, if you get that, you get the single one or the 4-part series. Henry Ford's talking about this in the 1920s. And honestly, if you read about it, you'll swear that he's talking about right now. And he says stuff like that their plan is to get people immersed in large palaces and in lifestyles, while they take everything and they get people off on these other tangents. And like you watch the Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous or Atlanta Housewives. I mean, it literally, in the 1920s, you'd really believe that he wrote this. You said there's no possible way they wrote it then. Because it's everything that we see happening now. He said the morality will be gone. They'll be teaching children against morality in the school system. They'll be taking God out of everything and trying to secularize everything. They'll be pushing alcohol and drug use to demoralize the society. Every single thing, which goes to the point, the Germans were reading Henry Ford. What happens is, to what your point is, Americans live in America and don't read Henry Ford.
Right.
Because, like you said, that's why the ADL exists. If people start reading this stuff, he talks about miscegenation in it. He talks in the International Jew about how they're pushing this miscegenation and interracial mixing because they're trying to dilute both races. But they operate under the guise of being white until something happens and the whites start coming after them. Then they come to black folks and operate under being a quote-unquote minority and try to get us. And he says they use us as the battering ram to try to break down the stuff that they're looking for. NAACP, which
prime
was
example.
People don't know this. NAACP never for one moment of its existence was a black organization. It was started by small hats. I mean, from the very inception. And what's so insidious about the NAACP, people don't know this. In their charter, when the small hats created it, one of the things they put in there is that this group cannot own land. Because they were trying to make sure that they disenfranchised black people and got our focus off of nation building onto the idea of being integrated so that we be dependent.
Right.
The reason they existed was to counter the moves of Booker T. Washington, and then later Garvey came, and they really targeted Garvey because for the Jew, for the small hat, the Zionists, it is important that there's no group that is independent. Because if black people, particularly black people, if we're independent and doing for ourselves, then the white Anglo-Saxon can see the Jew. Because we're over here not messing with them. We're minding our business, doing whatever we're doing. They're over there, and the Jew is right there running and controlling everything in their society, and they see them very clearly. So they can't operate under the cloak and the guise of secrecy. And just like in every place in Europe, once the Anglo-Saxon has gotten wise to what the Jew was doing to them, They're not like us. They don't want no reparations, and they start fighting.
Right.
So in order to prevent that, they keep black people and whites talking about this integration and keep us hodgepodge, which they know is going to create hostility, anger, and a mess. And neither group is going to be culturally rich and strong to stand its own ground, and then they can control everything.
Good God Almighty. It's just so many questions I have. But before we go any further, I do want to get out some information about where we are. We are at Everlasting Life. It's a full vegan restaurant and lounge located at 9185 Central Avenue, and that's in Capitol Heights, Maryland. We're inside of the eLife Media Studio. We do a whole lot of different activities here at the lounge on an ongoing basis. For instance, Children's Night is each and every Thursday. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Thursday night, thank you. Children 12 and under eat free from 6 to 8 p.m. Not only do they eat free with healthy food here at the restaurant, but they join other children in the lounge area, and it becomes a great big game room for them, and they have a good time, and they have different things that go on every week. So every Thursday, bring the children out for Children's Night. Following that up is our dinner and a movie. Every Friday night from 7 to 9 p.m. we air a different documentary, usually centered around some pertinent information that pertains to us as a people, things that you don't readily hear about in the mainstream. We air those type of shows, and then we have a discussion that follows. That goes on every Friday from 7 to 9 p.m. Black Wall Street Renaissance, every first Saturday of the month. I host this particular event where we take the lounge area and we fill it with different vendors and small business owners and people who have different products and services to provide to the community. And people come in and they shop. They shop all day. It's a free event. And we also open the stage up for different activities as well, midday during that event. This coming first Saturday, which is August the 4th, we're going to be hosting some brothers from the Nation of Islam. And we're going to be talking about how to police our own communities and how no nation can rise any higher than its woman. So they're doing a tour with this information, powerful information. And so they're coming here, and that's the first Saturday. That lecture starts at 2, from 2 to 4 p.m. Marketplace, every third Saturday of the month. We host Chris Mary here. She hosts a marketplace, fresh produce, natural supplements, herbs and spices, vegan groceries, health presentations, cooking demonstrations, and a whole lot more goes on every third Saturday from 11 to 4 right here at the marketplace. So you can come and shop vendors there as well. If you're interested in having your own platform here at the broadcasting studio, and you want to talk about some things that's going on in your own world that you want to get out to a larger audience, consider coming here and broadcasting with us. We're doing a special right now, unheard of, $25 per session, per show. So go online and link up to us to get more information about that. Going right back into the program, we're here with special guest, the Irritated Genie of Southeast. And we are talking about the whitewashing of black families here in this society. So we left off about, I forget where we left off, which was a whole lot that you shared. The White House. As you was talking, I got to thinking about so much of what seems to be disarray going on right now in those who are running the country, you know, and they seem to be so at odds with each other, and things are just unraveling. Do you see the small hats at play anywhere in all of that?
This is the thing that's so disappointing. Right now, what is happening is that we have a civil war going on. But people are looking at it in terms of liberal versus conservative. That's not what's really happening. To be more precise, what you have is two groups, and I mean they're not that singular, but let's just say two groups. You have the conservative white Anglo-Saxons who are non-homophile. I mean, they don't agree with homosexuality, they're not into pedophilia, they're not with that whole sexual revolution. They're conservative, generally Christian-based Anglo-Saxon. That's the Trump team. They're trying to take their country back from the small hats, who are today they call them liberals. All liberal means in today's world is a homophile under the control of small hats. And the homophile whole movement, the pedophilia and homosexuality, is all controlled by small hats anyway, Zionists. So it's the Zionists against the Anglos, which pits the homophiles against those who are not as pro-homophile. So it's the best time we have ever had in my lifetime to be politically astute and sophisticated for black people. Because while they're fighting, Trump needs to win the Senate and the House in order to not be a lame duck president, which means right now, with our political base, we have more power in our hands that we could leverage to get what we want than we've ever had in my 44-year lifetime. The problem is, and I hate to say this, but our political sophistication and maturity is less than kindergarten.
Yeah.
We are looking at it, we don't like Trump. That tells you how unsophisticated a black person is, because you shouldn't have liked Obama. You shouldn't have liked Clinton. You shouldn't like nobody that's up there that's not working for our people. You shouldn't like the Bushes.
Right.
We shouldn't be looking to like white folks. Politics ain't about who you like, it's about what you can get for your own people. That's all you're in it for, is to get something for your people and get out. And I mean, I actually talked to people. Trump came out recently, and it goes to what you're saying. He said, look, the people you wanna fight the football players, look, instead of standing up I want you to stand up for the flag. But you saying that justice is unfair in America? Give me the names of people who had unfair trials, I'll look into them.
Right.
Right now is when the black, and I've talked to these people that say that they are supporting the black political prisoners, and I say, look, what are y'all doing?
Here's an opportunity.
Listen, you organize, get to the plan and say, look, here's a list we want to give. Now, we know that there's some of them they're not going to give us, but if you put 40 of them on the line, political prisoners, and you get 10 of them, you now are getting 10 black people who fought for our race out of prison, back to their families, and you get a victory. But I heard people say, well, I'd feel better about doing it if it was Obama. I'm like, our political maturity is so ridiculous. We're like a bunch of people looking for a fantasy or something. We're not serious people at this time.
Well, I think that goes right into falling into the traps. Because if the small hats control the media, right back to square one, and they're against the Donald Trumps of the world, of course, they're going to make everything Donald Trump ever does in his whole life look horrible.
Right.
Because that is their mission. And we fall into those traps.
Right. They made Obama look great, even though he was pushing homosexuality on black people in America and Africa, murdering independent African leaders in Africa, well, Arab leaders in Africa, but also launching wars in the African parts of Africa. Watching after he launched the war against Gaddafi and watched Gaddafi be murdered, but then the black citizens being lynched by the Arabs that he paid to go in there, and he didn't say it. He didn't even say a word about it. They're committing genocide against black people there. He paid for the genocide, and he don't say a word about it. We are okay with that because the small hats put him in power to do that and give like you said, a story. But then when the small hats turn around and make Donald Trump this monster, it's like, well, we should have already known he was a monster. He's white, but he said he'll let some people out of jail. Why aren't we galvanizing and try to get it done?
Right. Well, going a little bit back into our initial discussion about interracial, the lightening of this society, and what happens to a world without melanated people? What happens if they are able to do to us here what they did to the people of Australia, the people of the Dominican Republic, the people of the Middle East? That's Africa. People forget that. That was all Africa. Africa was the land of the blacks. Now you have this whole segment that's called the Middle East, which is nothing but Africa. How did those people get that hue? But what happens, do you think, what do you see if nothing changes, we don't fight back, we just go with the flow, and all the children that are being born, starts to get lighter and lighter? What happens to...
I get the best answer I can give you. What happened to the Native Americans in America will happen to us. And then let me be clear, I'm not talking about some black folks saying, I was an original Native, I'm not talking that stuff. I'm saying these people that we call the red man, who were here, 500 nations of them. If I ask you a question, it's an honest question. When was the last time you can say you definitively saw a pure-blooded Native American?
I don't know. I wouldn't even know what that looks like.
Right. But guess what? 500 years ago, if you'd have landed here, that's all you'd have seen.
Yeah.
So, in 500 years, matter of fact, we say they got here in 1492. Yeah, it's been a little bit over 500 years. In 500 years, a race that spanned from Canada all the way down to the tip of South America.
Millions of people.
Millions have been exterminated. And we pretend like we live here, we go day to day, pretending like that didn't happen to create America. And like we don't know what happens to a race of people that don't defend their interests. But we do, because that race of people that was here in the beginning, even when we do our little elementary school, we learn about the Pilgrims came. There was some people here when the Pilgrims came. Them people ain't here now. And the few that are on reservations, we don't never see them. And if you do go to the reservation, they have the highest alcoholism, sexual abuse, and depression rates in the world. And that's African people internationally if we don't wake up and stop this miscegenation and various other things that are happening.
Wow. I think one time I was riding down Brandywine Road going into Waldorf, Maryland, for those who are familiar with the Maryland area. And I saw Mattawoman Beantown. and I was just reading the signs, because I happened to not have been driving. And I was reading all the signs. I was like, oh, this sounds like all Indian names. Let me just look a few of these up real quick and see. So I put in Mattawoman. It said extinct. I was like, wow, it hit home. It just hit home for me. I was like,
woo!
Wow.
Jeez.
It said extinct. And
Jeez.
so, yeah, it was just, going to your point.
And if you put in Tasmanian, really it's extinct. They have some people now that are mixed blooded and they consider themselves Tasmanian, but the last Tasmanian, we know her when she was murdered. I mean, we have her Truganini. We have her story.
That was Australia, right?
No, that was right off the coast of Australia, Tasmania, yeah. It's
that
not
was
Australia. The Tasmanian people were right off the coast of Australia. It was a whole island, all black, 100%. To the last person they killed her. And she said, all I want you to do is please don't cut my body up. Because when they would do it, they would mutilate black people. And she knew she was dying. And she said, please don't do that. And as soon as they killed her, as soon as she died, they cut her body up into different pieces and did all this stuff they do, this stuff. And to the last one, we know the name of the last Tasmanian. To your point, think about it. You talking about Maryland. In order to get down there, some people take two different routes. You can take Route 5 or you can take Indian Head Highway.
Indian Head Highway. Wow.
Where the murder of Native Americans would occur, and they would put their heads on poles to tell the Native Americans, you don't want to come around and get out of here.
Wow.
And now you have a highway named after the murder of Native Americans.
And we ride it every day and say it every day and don't even put two and two together.
I'm going on Indian Head.
Wow. Same concept.
Manhattan.
Yeah, even today, I mean, when we watch TV and we see what's taking place, I was like, are we just going to ignore the fact that every time you see a celebrity or a sports player, black man usually, getting married or dating, it's a white woman? And if it's not a white woman, it's somebody who could pass as white.
And now,
are we just going to pretend like this is not an epidemic?
And it's on both sides now. I mean, let's look. Serena Williams.
Right.
She married a white guy. Venus will be coming soon behind after that.
And then we defend the behavior as black people.
Because
we don't even realize.
We're in such a war, black men against black women, that what happens is when the black male does it, the black men, well, I'm saying these women are so hard to get along with. But then when Serena does it, the black man's like, look at this, these sisters, they don't love us. But then the sisters are like, oh, well, I mean, you got to understand, the brother. It's like no, in both situations, no one's saying, what is the impact of this having on our young people who see this and think maybe this is the way I should go?
Right.
Which is what both groups should be saying. Men and black men, we're one race. We're not separate and distinct.
Right.
I hear the arguments that are made that allow this kind of thing are very dangerous. Like I hear women say, I'm part of a two minority group. I'm a woman and I'm black, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life, because think about it. Who gets the most brunt of direct racism in America?
The black man?
Right. I mean, I don't think anybody would dispute that. I mean, when you see most of the lynchings, not all of them, but most of the black men.
Right.
So how ridiculous would I say? Because since we are the ones getting the most vicious abuse, if I said, I'm a double minority, I'm a man and I'm black, that's ridiculous. What are you talking about, dude? Look, you're a black man, you're part of a race. You're the one to protect the family. That's why you're getting, because you're supposed to be protected. And they know that they can't do nothing to the family if you're doing your job. So you get the brunt of it. It don't have nothing to do with, you don't separate that from your women, because when you are being attacked, where does that leave your women and children? In a bad condition. So the whole family's been attacked. So, but somehow, when they get us separating from each other, now the black woman somehow thinks that her being a woman has anything to do with the abuse, when in fact, she doesn't suffer the same type of abuse that the black men do. It's like, is she saying she wants more abuse? It's ridiculous. But it's being done because the only way you can attack a people like this, you have to divide them. So if we've separated ourselves, I'm a woman this and I'm this, and I'm a man this and this, from our blackness, then what that means is we no longer see ourselves as a family.
Right.
As an automatic black man and black woman, as something that stays. It's not even a debate. Black man supposed to be a black woman. We don't see it that way anymore. Because I'm a black man, and what you mean you go through? Anything you're going through, your sisters, your daughters, your mama got to deal with. Who coming to get you out of jail when you get locked up?
Right.
Who coming to help you when you get put out your place? Who's coming to support you your whole life when you can't get anything done and you got to go stay somewhere or something? It's always the black woman.
Right.
And in the reverse, who is it that you know if you call this person because somebody did something wrong to you, that's going to go driving down there like he crazy and do something on your behalf? It's the black man. He going to do it. You know that, sisters. Right. In fact, many sisters know because they'll tell the brother sometimes, even when they shouldn't, what's going on, because they know that you tell a black man if he cares about you that something's happening, he's going out there to do something about it.
Right.
But they're dividing us.
Yeah.
And that division is not just creating turmoil, it's genocide.
Yeah.
Because now we're not picking each other as mates.
Right.
And now, even though it's still 90% of brothers got black wives, they will strategically skip over 9 out of 10 of the brothers that are athletes that are married to women have happy relationships. That would be wonderful if our people saw it. All the little brothers say, I want me a woman like that. And the sisters would be like, oh, I want me a man, I can get one like that. They don't show those. They pick the 10%, they got the white ones, and those are the ones they put.
Yeah.
They don't show us the 98% of black women that got black husbands that are on TV.
Right.
They picked a few of them.
Right.
They go over the white man and then put it on there and make it look like
blow
it's
it up.
yeah,
Make it look like it's average everyday.
like it's the greatest thing that ever happened. But look, we've been seeing these white boys chopping black women up and killing them. They don't put that out there. These sisters go and dating these white guys, and then the white guy get mad and they complain about brothers beating them, but these white boys is killing these sisters.
Yeah.
And chopping them up and beating them and hanging them and doing all kind of stuff. They don't put that out there though.
Yeah, it's a lot going on in the church. Women's liberation movement comes to mind. I think we got caught up as black women into all that, and that kind of played into the whole division. And I also think about how during the separation time, before integration, our family units were intact. There were more married black couples in this society than whites during that time. So here we are again, another scenario where here we are, 30, 40, 50 years later, and our family units are in shambles.
And again, going back to the reality, who did this? If you look it up, there's a book called The Endangered Black Family, The Unisexualization of the Black Family by Nathan Hare and Dr. Julia Hare, Dr. Nathan Hare and Dr. Julia Hare. They told us back in 1984 that this was happening. And what's deep about it, it was government sponsored. They actually, in that book, they show you the government programs designed to pull black women away from black men and black families and destroy the black family. Even to the point they had one conference in 1974 or 76 where they had 500 black women there. And by the end of the conference, the people who threw the conference actually told them what the objective was. And this is in 1974 and 1976. It's in the book. They said, our objective, the reason we brought you out here, is because it's time for black women to find an alternative to black men. And the two primary alternatives should be other women or white males. They announced it, and this book was written in 84 about a conference that was in 1976 that's in the book. So I want people to understand, yes, black women have to a large degree, many, and on a large scale, have abandoned the idea of being part of a race and see themselves separate and distinct from their men. But they didn't do that because they woke up one morning and did that. This is federally funded, sponsored small hat orchestrated but government backed, organized effort to drag black men and women apart. This is not the black woman is evil and she woke up and started hating black men in the morning. Didn't happen that way.
Wow. What? This is a question I've asked several times in several different platforms, and I have yet to really get a clear, concise response. Why do you think that black men date outside of their race like 3 times as often as black women do?
I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna give an answer to it. It's gonna be not exactly what you think. Well, the first part I say, the reason is only 3 times. At one time, it's been more like 10 times. So I'm saying that to say, black women are catching up. So that's why I want to be very clear. I'm gonna tell you why. Because, and I hate to say this, traditionally I had a different answer. I said the black woman is the most loyal member of any race. That was I used to argue with people, and I feel a little bit bad about it because I see something different now. No. Because black men were the ones who were allotted the opportunity more. And white female was presented as the standard of beauty. And any man wants the trophy. That's how we are. And because that's what we have been indoctrinated with as children, these white female images, and then we saw some people who were doing well, the Jack Johnsons of the world, these other guys doing it. We're following that formula that's been taught. Our uncle teaches you want a red bone, and dark is bad. So that is part of it. But also, we could. If we made enough money or something, it was an option. I used to think black women wouldn't date outside the race, and I think to some degree it used to be that, but that's not true. How do I know? Because now that white males have decided to complete the genocide of the black race, they're now more accepting because it's being small hat driven. They're now accepting marrying black women and bringing them in. Now black women are doing it. And where it used to be 10 to 1, how frequent black men dated outside the race to a black woman, now down to 3 to 1. So what that means is black women are catching up. Now they're doing it because they can. Because for the first time in the history of this country, a white male on a large scale will marry a black woman. So it's not that black women were so loyal. They didn't have the option to marry a white male because he'd use her as trash like he did on a slave plantation and throw her away. Now he's saying, I'll keep you because I'm committing genocide. So I'll keep the little mixed baby, and then after the second generation, it'll be gone. I'll keep you, and black women are going for it. And you actually hear black women articulating the fact of rationale why it's okay to be doing it. You see black women saying, go on, go girl for Serena Williams marrying a white male and throwing away her jeans and spitting in her father's face. We see this total disregard for a racial existence in black family coming from a black woman that we've never seen before. Part of it being for the war that black men have fought through hip-hop and the disrespect and the molestation over the last 40 years of the culture against black women. Then the other part of it being she's now being drawn in and she has the option to race trade the way many black males have done in the past. She can now be a race trader, and she's showing she's willing to do it.
Well, what do you say to those who say, well, you can't help who you fall in love with?
Okay, I would say this, that how come the numbers are increasing? If you can't help you fall in love with, then how come in 1950 black men wasn't interracially dating at the same rate and black women weren't interracially dating at the same rate? If you can't help, it shouldn't matter what time period you're in. If you can't help it, it shouldn't be changing then.
That's a good point.
Why is it changing if you can't help it? Yeah, you can't help it, and you are helping it. What your mind tells you can do is what you do. Right. So there are people out here that are doing all kinds of stuff. You can say, well, I can't help you. Well, if you use that logic, then a woman can't help if she fall in love with a woman. If you use that logic. But that's not true. You can choose what you want to do. In fact, not only can you, why in Africa did the fathers go out and pick the mate if you can't choose who you fall in love with? That's not true. That woman was married to the man who took care of her. Why? Because the family said this is a good guy. Even when the woman goes out and says who she gonna make, she did decide. It was 5 guys that were trying to holler at her. She picked the one she gave her number. Exactly. So you do pick. You didn't just say, well, I can't say no, yeah. I'm taking all 5 numbers. The first one to get me has me. It don't work that way.
Yeah.
So it's just not true. It's an excuse to be irresponsible.
Wow. What's the solution? What do you see as, what do we do to change the course?
And I'm going to say this is going to sound totally self-serving. But it is self-serving, but it's really not. It's really my answer. See, what you're talking about here now is something I've been talking about since the 90s. But, you know, sometimes I feel like one little voice in the wind. I've been saying like this homophilia, the integration, and those are the 2 main things. The combination of these things are going to exterminate us. And the degeneracy with the negative messages in the culture and the hip-hop and all that music. I said these 3 things are going to annihilate us, and the drugs too. So it's taken decades. It's been a long time, but I figured it out. You got to find the least common denominator that can bring black people together. Straight black pride. I figured it out. That's the platform. When you ask what's going to fix it, that's why we created it. I didn't create it because of anything else than what you just said. All of these things are happening.
Yeah.
You see these things are converging to destroy the race. So you got to have a platform that's simple. It can't be complex, but it's got to eliminate the possibility or the likelihood of interracial dating. Okay, well, we determine what the black means. I mean, you got to have a black mother and a black father, which means even if you came from an interracial date, you can't even be a member, which means you definitely can't go forward and do it. So we create a platform that's about the upliftment of our families, about being stable. It don't matter how much money you make or what your job is or what your education is. So we get away from all of that classism, and we incentivize the behavior that we want. And it's international. It don't matter where you are if you black. If you straight black pride, if you in Dominican Republic and you believe in that principle, or Haiti, or Africa, or America, or England, if you black, you can buy that. It makes sense. It's simple. It puts away the airs of me being better than you and that's and another, and it makes me say I got to support you too. I fundamentally believe it's just that people are going to have to catch up. People have a lot of egos, but the reality, that platform is the 21st century black platform for African survival.
Wow. Okay. What you have some things coming up. We're running out of time, but I did want to share with the people you do on the lecture circuit.
Yes.
As well as other things here.
Yes. We have this coming Friday. We're going to be at the Umoja House. I think it's 2015 Bunker Hill Road. And that's going to be right up in Northeast. We're doing Saving the Black Family. Saving the Black Family. Which is going to be a discussion. It's going to be quite a discussion right now for me anyway. But I think it'll be a really good discussion because people are seeing that the family is falling apart.
Right.
So we're going to be doing that this Friday. That's July 27th.
Yes.
27th, 7:30 p.m. at Umoja House is free, so come on up, participate in that. Then on August 4th, I'm going to be at African Liberation Day in Philadelphia, Malcolm X Park. So I'm going to be doing a keynote there as well, so come on out, hear that. We're going to talk about saving this black family, 'cause that's what it's all about right now. And then on August 11th, we're going to be having a lecture here. Now it's actually a double lecture. I'm going to be lecturing, and then Professor James Small is going to be here. So you go August 11th, Everlasting Life is the place to be. You'll have Irritated Genie and Professor James Small back to back. I'm going to be doing a lecture entitled The War Against Satan. And this is going to be a powerful discussion because, as people know, I'm not Christian. However, if you're Christian, you're going to want to be here for this. But what I'm going to do with this particular discussion is it doesn't matter what religion you are or even if you're not religious. Everybody's going to walk out on the same page because I'm going to talk about what real evil is. I'm going to show it so that it doesn't matter if you're Christian, Muslim, Jewish, or everyday brother or sister, a Pan-African, whoever you are, you're not going to have any dispute when we walk out of here. And I'm going to define what it means to be at war with Satan. So it doesn't matter who you are, even if you don't believe in Satan. When you leave, you're going to say, I agree with what I heard this day. It's going to be powerful. And it's free.
And it's free. Well, family, that is our Empower Hour. Definitely catch Hanifa and I each and every Wednesday from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time right here at eLife Studios. You can find us on Facebook under Empower Hour Talk Show. You can also find our past episodes on YouTube under Miss Free the People. We also go live on Instagram. So yeah, join us each and every Wednesday. Like our page so you can get your reminder when we do chime in live, as we always doing some impactful topics of discussion that affect our everyday lives. Until next week, we will see you then. Take care of each other. Peace.